I've always been bothered when Batman media skips over Jason Todd. While he's far from my favorite Robin, he's still a very important part of Batman's character and the surrounding narrative. He represents Batman's failure, and simultaneously provides support for both fields of thought on if Batman should or should not resort to killing his adversaries. At the end of the day, Jason might just be the most important Robin, but he's often treated as just another story beat. Why is this? Well, it's no surprise that his story is dark, even for Batman. While his origin story may differ depending on which canon you're analyzing, one thing always stays true. Jason was reckless, impulsive, and hot-headed, which eventually led to his capture and usually death at the hands of the Joker. The Joker kidnapped Jason, beat him to the brink of death with a crowbar, then left him in an abandoned warehouse rigged to explode. Batman arrives just too late to save his protege, and his death would go on to haunt him for the rest of eternity. Then some comic book bullshit happened where Superboy Prime punched a hole in reality, which revived Jason, who then couldn't remember anything about his past life until Talia al Ghul put him in a Lazarus pit, which restored his memory and his mind and gave him a much darker personality, turning him into the anti-hero Red Hood. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Regardless, when the LEGO DC universe begins, Tim Drake is our current Robin, meaning that if the games hold the same continuity with DC canon, Jason Todd's time has already come to pass. The first LEGO Batman game finds time to reference Spoiler, Azrael, Huntress, Black Mask, and even the fact that Gotham has 2 Major League Baseball teams, but no Jason. The data also points out the existence of the Red Hood itself, which, if you don't know, was the identity of the Joker before he took his toxic bath. The fact that they took the time and effort to tell the player about the Red Hood, but not even allude to the existence of Jason Todd, really puts in perspective how much they don't want to touch on that tragic tale. But because Jason's Red Hood appears as a free-play character in LEGO Batman 2 and 3, something had to have happened to make him that way. What was it? And what is LEGO hiding? Well, I'll give you a hint. It isn't the events of Batman Under the Red Hood or Death in the Family, and it sure as hell isn't LEGO DC Batman Family Matters. It's something else that I haven't seen anyone mention on this scale before. Before we dive into that, if you go on to enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe. I'm currently racing against my other channel to see which one will hit 30k first, and it looks like it's gonna be pretty close. Join the winning team by turning that gray button red. Or black now, I don't know what color it is anymore. Let's speedrun DC canon. There are 4 main continuity Robins excluding Stephanie Brown, in this order: Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and Damian Wayne. Dick grows up to be Nightwing, Jason becomes the Red Hood, Tim becomes Red Robin, and Damian is still just Damian, as far as I'm aware. In the first LEGO Batman game, we get to play as the Tim Drake version of Robin, with him and Batman fighting side by side in each level to take down the classic Rogues Gallery before heading to the events of LEGO Batman 2. In this game, Batman teams up with Superman to take down Lex Luthor and the Joker, with the same versions of Batman and Robin being present, despite a small mistake on the developer's part for misnaming Tim as Dick. Exactly 1 year later within the game universe, LEGO Batman 3 sees a more extended cast of Justice Leaguers working together to stop the greater threat of Brainiac shrinking the Earth, which is where the current LEGO DC canon stops for now. Yes, DC supervillains would take place after the events of LEGO Batman 3, but there's still a lot of in-fandom debate on if that game is even canon. So to avoid ruffling any feathers, we'll put that one on the back burner for now. Besides, we're focused on the past, not the future. So what do these games tell us about Jason? Jason's first appearance is in LEGO Batman 2, but only as a handheld version exclusive. He appears in the LEGO Batman 3 console version, but again, doesn't hold any relevance to the main story. There isn't anything in these games that expands more on his backstory, and due to the lack of voice lines for the character, you may have not even realized that he used to be a Robin if you aren't familiar with Batman lore. The character is pretty unremarkable. He only has basic abilities in comparison to the rest of the cast, which allows him to fly under the radar, but I guess that's what LEGO intended, so we have to dig deeper. As previously mentioned, the data in LEGO Batman 1 does refer to the Red Hood, but this version of the character is the moniker used by the Joker before he falls into the vat of acid. Ironically, however, by not acknowledging Jason Todd at all in this data selection, it tells us quite a lot. It lets us know that by this point in Batman's adventure, Jason probably hasn't come back yet, meaning the events of this game are taking place during the time where Batman has already enlisted the help of Tim Drake as Robin, but before Jason returns to Gotham City as Red Hood. With this being the earliest chronological entry in the series though, it means we have to start turning to other forms of media to get our answer. We don't get any major flashbacks or callbacks in the next 2 games, so those aren't going to hold any direct relevance towards our central question. As many of you are going to suggest, maybe the events of the 2019 film LEGO DC Batman Family Matters mirrors the events in the game's universe, but I'm here to tell you that they don't. See, in this movie, when Red Hood returns, Damian Wayne is already Robin, meaning that if this movie were true to our game's timeline, then Red Hood would have had to have been present in Gotham City since the near inception of Tim Drake's Robin, all the way to when he gives up the mantle without alerting Bruce or anyone else, which I find quite unlikely. Scrapping that thought line entirely, we still have 2 more things to turn to. Those being the very media that inspired the games in the first place. Batman the Animated Series and the 1990 Tim Burton and Schumacher Batman films. As many of you are aware, most LEGO properties are based off of pre-existing IPs, and usually cover the events of the movies or shows that contain said IPs, like LEGO Indiana Jones, Avengers, or Star Wars. There's a common misconception that the Batman universe is a standalone thing, following its own story free of any kind of influence from other Batman media forms, but that's only half the truth. The music, characters, designs, team-ups, alliances, and even certain story beats are based off of events from both Batman the Animated Series and the Burton-Schumacher films. For the sake of this video, we're going to mainly focus on the animated series, because the films didn't even make it past Dick Grayson's Robin. I don't have the time nor patience to detail every little thing about the animated series, but if you haven't watched it already, please do so. It's on HBO Max and it's one of the greatest animated shows ever to be made, and it really does the Batman character justice. What you need to know for this video though is that the animated series has 3 seasons. Season 1 of the show focuses on just Batman tracking down various rogues around Gotham, while Season 2, titled The Adventures of Batman and Robin, focuses on, well, you guessed it. But Season 3 is the big thing we're concerned with. When Season 3 of the show released, the animation style and the character designs were revamped to fit in more with the designs of the newly released Superman the Animated Series, as well as graduating Dick to Nightwing and recruiting Tim as Robin. Batgirl also becomes a much larger part of the show, previously only being in 2 episodes of Season 2. Do you see where I'm going with this? The exact character cast for LEGO Batman 1 was Batman, Tim Drake Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, and of course, Alfred. The same cast of characters in the animated series. While that isn't enough to link these 2 together, let's go a bit deeper. Season 3 was obviously a big transitional period for the show, having to create a continuity with Superman as well, and they crossed over quite a bit. This almost exactly mirrors the transitional period for the first 2 Batman games as well. Take a look at the Robin suit design for Season 2, and now for Season 3. It goes from a green pant suit to a mostly black and red design. Now look at how it's represented in the games. Game 1 is green pants, and Game 2 is red and black. Game 2 is also the first game we're introduced to Superman, as well as the greater half of Metropolis, but that's still not all. Remember how I mentioned that the villains all got new designs to go with Season 3 of the animated series? What happens to the classic villains in LEGO Batman 2? They all get updated new designs. Still not convinced? let's go through the game's data and character roster. Just like in the animated show, the Batcave is entered through a grandfather clock. Instead of training with the League of Shadows like most media depicts it, Batman trained with ninjas and monks in the game, which is the exact same thing as the show. The entirety of the character roster for LEGO Batman 1 appears inside of the animated series, besides two. A Killer Moth, who was planned to be in the show, even having concept art done for the character, and Hush, who is the only secret character in the entire game. Even the weirdly specific fact that Scarface was carved out of a tree at Arkham is straight from the animated series. While it may not be a direct one-to-one to the animated series, you can at least now see that it was the main inspirational factor behind a lot of choices in the franchise. The visuals, the general story flow, etc., but we can push it one step further to incorporate LEGO Batman 3. The DCAU went from just a Batman show to a Superman and Batman show, all the way to a Justice League show, with the first episode's cast containing Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Martian Manhunter, and The Flash stopping alien invaders. This is the exact same cast as the Justice League in the end of LEGO Batman 2, with an error of only one character, that being the interchanging of Hawkgirl and Cyborg. If you still don't see the main inspiration, then that's beyond me, but there's still two final crucial details I'd like to touch on. Both the DCAU and the LEGO Batman universe refuse to mention Jason Todd. Contrary to popular belief, Death in the Family is not part of the DCAU. It is a direct comic book adaptation. Even the Justice League Unlimited show, which features the likes of Sinestro, Bouncing Boy, and Brainiac 5, doesn't have a single morsel of dialogue referencing Jason Todd. And you might think it's because these media forms don't want to put that image into kids' heads. And that's a perfectly reasonable explanation. Again, Jason's story is extremely dark. But is it much darker than alluding to Gotham inmates being hung from trees like the data about Scarface suggests? I don't think so. I think that the LEGO game chose to ignore Jason not because his story is overly dark, but also because it's too big a deviation from the source material. But if the animated series never touched on Jason, then how do we know what happened to him? While the show may not have given us an answer on what happened to Jason, the comic line that succeeds the animated series did, getting a 5-issue run on what happens to Jason Todd, which, in my opinion, will be the exact same answer for what happens in the game. So what's the storyline? To give the shortest explanation possible, the Joker kidnaps Jason and beats him to near death with a crowbar, but unlike Death in the Family, Batman arrives in time to save him. The Joker explodes the warehouse the two of them were inside of, and Batman barely gets Jason out alive. Jason then asks Batman to leave the Joker to die, since he knows he does more harm than good in this world, but Batman tells him they have to do better. As Batman is rescuing Joker from underneath a turned-over car, Jason gets up to stop him, knocking over some hydrogen canisters in the process, causing yet another explosion to ring out, but this time much closer to Jason himself. Batman tears through all the resulting rubble but finds nothing. As it's later revealed, Jason had grabbed onto one of the factory's parade balloons and floated off to safety, with Batman never knowing what happened until the day Red Hood returned to Gotham. Now don't worry, this is not all we have to go off of, because I have two more pieces of supplemental evidence that I think seals the deal in its entirety. There exists a line of physical LEGO toys under the DC Superheroes brand, the same one as the games. And believe it or not, both Jason Todd as Robin and Jason Todd as the Red Hood each appear in one respective set. Now, if I were to ask you the villain you'd most associate with Jason Todd, I'm sure 99% of you would say the Joker. He's the guy that makes Jason into Red Hood in the first place. And in LEGO set 10753, Jason's Robin appears alongside Batman and the Joker. Pretty standard stuff. But things take an interesting turn when you look at LEGO set 76055 Sewer Smash, which depicts Jason as Red Hood fighting against Killer Croc. While this may seem weird at first, it makes more sense when you realize that in the pre-Crisis version of DC, before the universe reset and all of that, Croc was the villain who killed Jason's parents. But I kept asking myself, why Croc? This continuity is post-Crisis. Why use your one usage of Red Hood to fight against Killer Croc? And whether this is intentional or not, I came to a realization. In the animated series comic line we talked about earlier, Jason Todd navigates through Gotham using the sewer lines, and ends up using Killer Croc's old base as his base of operations, with Batman telling Barbara that this place holds a kind of significance to Jason, because this is where Jason beat up Killer Croc so badly he spent a year straight in the hospital. Yeah, the dude with super resilient skin was beat up by a child. This place was so vital to Jason's development as a character that he was going to use it to kill both Joker and Tim Drake. A place so important that Batman would be able to realize right where he was. As a bit of a bonus piece of evidence, at the end of this same run of comics, Jason ends up being saved by Deathstroke, who made his first appearance in the LEGO universe in the handheld port of LEGO Batman 2. Nothing conclusive, but I just thought I should mention it. If the LEGO universe stays true to its animated series roots, we have no reason to believe that Jason's origin story differs at all from what we see in the post-TV show comic run. And it makes a lot more sense than the events of Death in the Family, which would allude to the idea of Jason dying at some point, or the events of Family Matters, which is its own strange can of worms. So there you have it. If you wanted to know why Jason was conveniently left out of the LEGO Batman universe, look no further than the evidence presented here. Not only was the story a bit too dark to put a focus on, but it's also a huge character deviation from the source material that the very games are based off of. I'd bet money on the intended events being similar, if not exact, to what happens in the Rise of the Red Sun comic run. But as always, let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching this far through, and if you enjoyed, a like and a sub really go a long way for a small channel like mine. In the meantime though, I've been BD1P, and I'll see you in the next video.